Good morning. Cue the loud traffic noise as soon as I turn on the video. Good morning. September morning. Yeah, you get free vocal lessons from a guy who can't sing. It's all part of it, free. If it's free, it's you, right? If it's free, it's me. Yeah. So September 27th, I got to say, man, I started this in June, right? And we were like in video 102 or something yesterday. So normally time goes fast when you're having fun. Definitely not having fun this year, but time is going fast. That's probably something to do with the fact that I'm in Thailand and not back grinding in the good old U.S. of A. So the 27th, the quality and quantity of service you render fixes your wages and determines what sort of experience you are getting. Well, there you go. The only constraints that by the way, as soon as I read that, the quality and quantity of service renders the wages determine what sort of experience you're getting, my sick mind immediately thought of a hooker. And no, I'm not into hookers. I never actually used one, believe it or not. Always had a girlfriend and got to buy her dinner, but it's not the same. But that's where my mind went, just so you know what's churning in there. Sick bastard. The only constraints that you have on your income and advancement potential are those you place upon yourself. If you don't like your position, or if you are unhappy with your salary, do something about it. What can you do to make yourself more valuable to your department or your company? What tasks have not been completed because no one has the time or the inclination to take care of them? Look around and identify things that need to be done. Don't wait to be asked. If you make it a habit to seek out opportunities to take on new tasks, you will increase your knowledge about the organization and become such a valued employee that your company can't afford to lose you. Okay, so going way back, when I was a computer programmer, sitting in a cubicle, the Dilbert life, which I love that cartoon, by the way. I thought Dilbert was brilliant. Scott Adams, the guy who wrote Dilbert, he wrote two really good, funny books also. Look them up. The Dilbert Principle, I think it is, or something like that, was one of them. Very, very funny, smart guy. But anyway, I was in the cubicle jungle for 13 years programming computers, and I did what Napoleon suggested there back when I was an employee and I'm an entrepreneur. I remember what I had for breakfast these days. I'm 57, I'm semi-retired, living in paradise, whatever. I'm fat, I'm slow, I'm dumb, right? But when I was in my 30s, I was fucking razor sharp. So I was programming, and when you're doing programming, when you're writing code to write a program to do stuff, you have what's called a main line, right? Which is your outline, like your title and chapters of a table of contents for a book, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that you go out and call what was called back then, I don't know what they do now, but a subroutine, right? And the subroutine would do a unit of work. So just a real simple form to collect information. You would write something to write the screen and put it up there so people could see it. Then you'd have a program that gets called. When they click a button, they hit submit. You have another subroutine that first goes and makes sure that all the fields that you need for that form to be complete, required fields with little asterisks near them, are filled in. You do like an edit subroutine and check, are all these boxes filled out? If not, go to the subroutine that puts a message up on the screen. A little box pops up and says, please fill out, the missing fields, right? If all the fields are there, and the data, sometimes you do a second edit subroutine that's going to go through the fields, go through the characters, and make sure they're, legitimate. Like it could be a phone number or a date, and you're going to check, make the computer say, okay, here's this group of text that they typed in. Is it a date? Is it something that you recognize as a date, Mr. Computer? You ask it that question. In the other subroutine, if it is, okay, next, drop down. You go to another subroutine and that's going to take the data and store it in a database for later, so it could be pulled up and edited and changed later, right? And then maybe after they print the form, or after they fill in the form, they want to print it. So you'd have another subroutine that calls the print thing and sends instructions to the computer to print, right? So all those little tasks, check it, edit it, put up the screen, go to the next screen if there's more than one page of data, store the data, all that stuff was written by us. And back when I was sharp, razor sharp, which I admittedly am fuzzy now, right? 20 years, is a long time, and your mind turns to mush the older you get. And that's for me, at least it has. And I think part of that has to do with diet, being out of shape and everything. I think my mind's out of shape also. So there is that. So I would write the main line and then write the subroutine, and I was able to keep in my head everything that was going on in the program and do all those pieces like I just talked about. Whereas a lot of people had trouble keeping the whole thing and the structure in their head and writing the subroutine and then writing the code, because it's like a paragraph, the subroutine, you give it a name and save it. So I was able to do it, like in a linear fashion, in the way it's going to happen in real time, by keeping everything in my head and knowing and so I would get done faster. And what happened was, with management, being the dirty dogs they are, when I finished a 2-month assignment in 5 weeks, they would go, oh, good, this dude over here who's being paid the same as me, right, because they're a consultant, or I was a consultant making $50 an hour, 100 grand a year, and these were employees making 30, 40, 50 grand a year. They would take the work that the employee hadn't finished, with the deadline coming up, because the manager just cares about the deadline, and say, here, give it to Brady, right? He finished, he's done, we're paying him, so here, take the work. And from an owner perspective, from a manager perspective, I get it. You just want the work done. You don't give a shit who does it. But from my perspective, I was like, motherfucker, I worked my ass off, got the shit done early, and my reward was getting more work dumped on me, sometimes a lot more work, because once again, by then, the projects are always behind, right? They just always are. They never give enough time for the project. You're always under the deadline. You're always under the gun, and the management hates to pay. So they'll extend, the deadline only as a last resort. Usually what they'll do is approve overtime at the last minute, so the last 2 weeks or last month, when they realize they're not going to make their goal, the deadline, they freak out and throw money at the problem, right? Because that's easy, but it's a last resort because they're cheap, right? And they wouldn't just throw one person to work at me; they'd throw 4 people to work at me because they just want it done. They don't care. Oh, you can get work done here. Here's more work. So I got wise to that pretty quick and started to, okay, you give me 2 months to get this done, it's going to take 2 months, because maybe that's why I didn't succeed. Maybe that's why I was only in a play. I mean, the thing was, to be honest with you guys, I was happy with $50 an hour, because to me at that time, we're talking about 1989 to 2001. So for me, 100 grand a year was success, right? Because I came from, humble beginnings. My mom was a school teacher making 9 grand a year, and with 2 kids, single. My dad left her when I was 3. So 100 grand was a lot of money, making 6 figures. I'm successful. I was taking trips. I had a nice car. I had a nice house. I'll be honest with you, I was good. I was comfortable. And comfortable doesn't cut it, but I didn't know that then. I wish to God I had somebody talking to me then, like I'm talking to you now, because I would have woke the fuck up, worked harder, and or better yet, invested some of that 100 grand a year in real estate, and I could have retired much earlier than 57. So that's that. But yeah, it's human nature. I've always said I'm not afraid of anything, and that's the God's honest truth. But I am lazy, and that was laziness. If they're going to pay me $50 an hour, they kick back. I'm going to kick back and make my $50 an hour. You know, especially because you're like, well, your boss knows you could do more work because you got done with the first assignment in 5 weeks. That's true. But as a contractor, which is what I was, 1099 independent contractor, I took new assignments every 3 months, 6 months, whatever. You would do a contract and come down and go on to another place. So I was constantly working for different bosses as a hired gun, right? So I was able to adjust and just, you know, what took me 5 weeks in the past took me 8 weeks this time, or whatever the deadline was. I would always meet the deadline. I didn't want to be a problem. I wanted to be part of the solution. I was being paid, but I definitely learned early on, stop going into friggin' hyper overdrive and stop getting shit done way earlier than everybody else, because my reward would just be more work. So very interesting. Napoleon said that. Going back to the entrepreneur side, of course, now you're the employee, you're the boss, you're the board of directors, you're the CEO, the COO, and CIO. What did I do for 4 years? I worked harder for myself than I ever did for anybody else. And once again, I think that's human nature too. Of course you're going to bust ass for yourself because you're counting on the results. And look what I was able to do, right? Thailand, chill out. So that's it for today, guys.